Have you ever been asked to stop being yourself by the very people you love most? I have. One day, my own child looked at me and said, "Why don't you change?" It sounded like such a simple question at the time, but those 5 words carried something heavier than they seemed. They whispered that who I am isn't enough, that maybe I should soften, shrink, reshape myself to fit who they think I should be. That was the moment something inside me began to tremble. Because behind that question, there was silence. And in that silence, I felt the beginning of my own disappearance. I've lived my life for my family. I raised my children, gave up so many of my own dreams, put myself second and, sometimes last. I didn't mind. I did it out of love. But now, in this chapter of life, I find myself being asked to become someone else. They say, "Don't eat that. You shouldn't wear this. You should go to a different church." Why do you think like that? Bit by bit, I feel myself being into a mold I never chose. Have you ever felt that? Or watched it happen to someone you care about? Please, stay with me, because what I'm sharing with you might surprise you. And maybe, just maybe, it will change the way you see some things happening around you. I'm not asking for much. I don't want luxuries. I'm not trying to rebel. I just want to keep being who I am. I want the right to enjoy my coffee the way I like it, to wear what makes me feel like me, to pray the way I've always prayed. But instead, I get pushed back. They say I'm being stubborn, that my ways are outdated, that I complain too much. So I stay quiet. I don't raise my voice, not because I've got nothing to say, but because I'm tired of being dismissed. My shows aren't on the TV anymore. My mornings don't start how they used to. Even my prayers now make someone uncomfortable. And I wonder, how did I get here? Sitting quietly in a house that feels less and less like mine, wondering when exactly I stopped being seen. This is where it gets difficult. I know they love me. I believe they want the best for me. But when does love cross the line into control? When does help stop being helpful? Where is that fine, invisible line between caring and suffocating? I've come to see that my story isn't just mine. I've met others, mothers, fathers, grandparents, who've been through the same, who've quietly stepped back from their own lives to keep the peace, who've lost their voice while trying not to lose their family. And that hurts more than anyone knows. There's this unspoken message we receive as we grow older, that aging means letting go of everything, our routines, our beliefs, our identity, that if we don't adjust, we're seen as too much, that love has conditions now, and the hardest part, this pressure comes from those we love most. But I need to ask, what if it's for your own good is just another way of saying, I don't want to deal with who you really are anymore? What if, in the name of helping, they're rewriting the story of who we've always been? I'm not just telling you a story, I'm holding up a mirror. And maybe, just maybe, what you see in it is closer than you think. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic. And maybe you're watching me now and thinking about someone close to you. Or maybe you're thinking about yourself. Maybe, like me, you've felt that quiet pressure, the kind that doesn't shout, but still pushes you to adapt, to shrink a little, to stay quiet in your own life story. If this touches something inside you, even just a little, I want to invite you to share. Leave a comment. You don't have to tell everything, just say what moved you most, or what this made you feel, because I believe your voice matters deeply. And when you choose to speak, even softly, you remind someone else that they are not alone. And that simple reminder, it can be more powerful than we think. If you feel this kind of story needs to reach more people, give it a like. Just that one small action helps this message travel further. It helps it land where it's needed most, in the lives of those quietly carrying these same wounds. And if, like me, you believe in walking together through stories that aren't just told, but felt in the heart, consider subscribing to this channel. Each video we share here continues this journey, this walk through respect, identity, and the kind of listening that heals. The more we grow, the more voices we can bring to light. Voices like mine, like yours, voices that have stayed silent for too long in the name of peace, or fear, or love. It didn't start with a fight. It rarely does. You know, it started with concern. Soft, quiet concern, wrapped in gentle smiles and kind offers to help. I had just gone through a hard moment, to fall. Nothing too serious, but enough to make everyone around me a little more worried than usual. When my son suggested I move in with him, it didn't feel like pressure. It felt like love. I looked around. My little apartment, filled with things that held pieces of my story. The old clock that chimed every hour, the armchair where I read every night, the curtains I had chosen all by myself when no one was watching. Leaving it behind wasn't easy, but I told myself it was for the best, for safety, for peace of mind, for them, for him. At first it was small. They brought me meals without asking what I wanted. They changed the TV channel before I finished watching. They answered the phone for me, handled the bills, all with the kindest smiles. "You deserve to rest," they said. "Let us take care of everything." And I believed them. I wanted to believe them. But little by little, something inside me began to shift. When I said I wanted to go to my church, they hesitated. "It's too far," they said. "And it's cold there. Why don't we find something closer?" And they did. A different church, a different way, a different rhythm. I tried to fit in. I really did. But sitting in those pews, hearing songs I didn't know, surrounded by unfamiliar faces, I felt like a stranger in my own spirit. Then came the clothes. "Why don't you try something more modern?" my daughter-in-law said with a warm smile. I didn't want to seem difficult, so I nodded. I agreed. Slowly, my long skirts disappeared. The soft pastel sweaters I loved went into boxes. I told myself it was just clothes, just a small thing. But when I looked in the mirror, I didn't see me anymore. My voice softened. My thoughts stayed inside. And everyone kept saying how well I was adapting. But I wasn't. I was adjusting. Yes, but not out of freedom. Out of fear. Because saying no started to feel like saying I didn't love them. Because just being myself felt like I was being difficult. They called it care. But it came with quiet rules I never agreed to. Rules that sounded like love, but felt like silence. I missed my old neighbor who used to bring coffee every Saturday. I missed my late-night radio. I missed deciding what soup I wanted to eat. But most of all, I missed not having to explain myself. I missed being just me. Now, I want to go even deeper into this, because beneath what looks like kindness, there are quiet forces shaping who we're allowed to be. Not all change is chosen. Sometimes, it's handed to us piece by piece, dressed in the name of love. And the truth is, you can lose yourself, not all at once, but slowly, one small yes at a time. This isn't just about change, it's about the kind of change that takes little pieces of who you are, until all that's left is someone easier for everyone else to live with but who no longer knows her own voice. And so I began asking questions I had never dared to say out loud. When did I stop being me? When did love become control? And how do I find my way back? If any of this feels familiar to you, even a little, write this with me. I'm on this journey too. Because sometimes, saying that out loud even, if no one knows your name, is the first small step toward remembering exactly who you are. They never shouted at me. They never forced me with harsh hands. But little by little, everything I loved just vanished. It started with something small, my coffee. I always liked it strong, just a little bitter, the way my mother taught me when I was young. But they started saying it was bad for my heart, that I should switch to decaf, that it was for my own good, and I gave in. I told myself, it's just coffee, right? Then it was the TV, my novellas, those Sunday reruns, the old movies that made me laugh and cry. "This is too sad," they said. "You should watch something lighter, more modern." I didn't want to argue, so one changed the channel. And before I knew it, I stopped turning the TV on at all. One day, I noticed my rosary was gone. I always kept it next to my bed. "We just cleaned the room, Mom," they said. "Maybe it got misplaced." I asked about it again. No one looked. No one mentioned it after that. They said the church was too far, that the garden was unsafe, that my quiet mornings, just me, my prayers, and the rising sun were a bit of a delay to the day. "We have things to do," they said. And slowly, all those tiny parts of me began to fall away. The pain doesn't always come with shouting or slamming doors. It comes in the soft suggestions, in the smiles that hide decisions I never made, in the juice handed to me before I even asked, in the sweater draped over my shoulders before I say I'm cold, in the plans made without me. That's what I've come to understand. The real loss isn't loud, it's silent, it's invisible. It happens when your choices get overwritten in the name of care, when your voice starts to feel like an interruption, when you begin to wonder if you're even still seen. I used to light a candle every Thursday evening. It was my moment, my way of remembering the people I loved, my husband, my sister, even my old dog. That small flame meant something. But here, with grown children around who roll their eyes and say things like, "That's superstitious," or "It's wasting electricity," I stopped. "We carry them in our hearts, Mom," they said, and I nodded. What else could I say? When others start making all your choices for you, even the smallest ones, you stop feeling at home in your own body. You speak less. You hesitate more. You say sorry before you even speak. It's not the big arguments that break you. It's the small surrenders, the silent agreements we make just to avoid being told, once again, you're being difficult. I remember hearing that sentence. The first time, it stung. The second time, it echoed. And then, I started whispering it to myself before anyone else could. That's how this kind of quiet manipulation works. It doesn't yell. It smiles. It tells you, ever so gently, that your preferences are silly, your beliefs are outdated, and your ways of living are just inconvenient. And the most painful part, it's often said by the very people who believe they're helping. That's what makes it so hard to name. That's why people like me go quiet. Not because we agree, but because we're tired. Tired of explaining ourselves. Tired of not being heard. Now, I want to go even deeper into this subject. Because under every one of these stories, there's a deeper truth. Autonomy isn't just about making big decisions. It's about choosing the kind of tea you want, the silence you need, the prayer that feels right, the pace that makes you feel alive. It's about defending your right to still be who you are then, if that version of you makes others uncomfortable. So if you've ever felt like someone tried to fix you for your own good, or if you've seen it happen to someone you love, pause for a moment and ask yourself, where does Karandon control begin? Because for many of us, the real loss of freedom doesn't come from old age. It comes from being rewritten by the people who think they know best. And that rewriting, it's not about love. It's about control, masked as protection. Now I want to know what you think. Leave a comment and write these words. I still want to be me. That simple phrase, it could be a lifeline for someone out there living this story in silence. It usually starts with a sentence that sounds kind, protective, even loving. It's for your own good. Just for words, harmless at first glance. But I've learned those words can slowly erase your voice without anyone even noticing. That's what happened to me. I spent my whole life making decisions, solving problems, raising my children. I handled things. I endured. I adapted. But now it feels like everything I do has to be approved, filtered, watched, over-controlled. They told me not to drink coffee in the evening, not because I have a heart condition, but because I might not sleep well. The truth, they didn't want to be woken up if I had to get up during the night. So I stopped. My TV shows, too loud, too outdated. Why don't you watch something else, Mom? My books, too depressing. My rosary, no one ever says anything, but when I reach for it, the room goes quiet. Every opinion comes wrapped in a ribbon called concern. Every restriction is delivered with a smile and called care. But I know what's behind it. I can feel it. A quiet shift. A change in how they see me. I'm no longer Mom. I'm no longer the woman who held this family together. Now I'm someone who needs to be managed, advised, corrected, guided, as if I've forgotten how to live. And that shift, it hurts. It hurts more than I ever imagined it would. Because when people stop asking you what you want, when they start deciding for you, they're not just removing choices, they're peeling away pieces of your identity. Not out of cruelty, no, out of fear. Fear of losing me, fear of change, fear of seeing themselves in me, and realizing time moves faster than we think. But fear is not love, and love is not control. Every time I hear "this is for your own good," I wonder if what they really mean is, this is what makes me feel better. Because it's easier to tell me what to do than to sit with the discomfort of watching me do things my own way. It's easier to assume than to ask. Safer to take charge than to trust me with my own life. But there is always a cost. I started hesitating before I spoke. I started hiding things that brought me joy, just to avoid hearing that disapproving tone. I changed the way I dressed, the way I walked, even the way I prayed. Not because I wanted to, but because I was told it was better that way. Better for who? That question keeps echoing in my heart. In the name of protection, I was being silenced. In the name of love, I was being edited. In the name of care, I was being controlled. Now I want to go even deeper into this topic. Because this isn't just about me, or my family, or my experience. This is happening in thousands of homes, to women like me, every single day. It's not always loud. It's not always cruel. Sometimes it's wrapped in kindness and good intentions. That's what makes it so hard to name. But this is not about blame. This is about awareness. Because we don't become invisible overnight. It happens, slowly, in stages, through quiet compromises and well-meant restrictions that, little by little, tell us we are no longer trusted to be ourselves. So let me ask you, has anyone ever told you what to believe, what to wear, or who you should be, claiming it was love? If you've felt this pressure of on, just a little, you're not alone. There's a generation like mine, being reshaped to fit into boxes we never asked for. And there's a generation of adult children, trying to help, trying to care, but not always realizing where help becomes control. This is not an easy conversation. It takes honesty, vulnerability, deep listening, because maybe, just maybe, real love isn't about keeping someone safe from their choices. It's about standing beside them, even when you would have chosen something else. Comment below. That hit deep, because if you've ever lived even a piece of this story, I want to hear you. I want to know I'm not the only one. There's a kind of silence I've come to know very well, and it doesn't come from peace, it comes from fear. A silence filled with hesitation, with the weight of everything I don't say out loud, and the pressure to not disappoint anyone around me. That's the silence I live in now. On the outside, people might think I'm fine, that I'm in a safe place, surrounded by family, with food on the table and a roof over my head. And yes, I am grateful. Truly, I'm grateful for not being alone. I'm grateful that someone thought of me. But let me tell you something, gratitude can be complicated. Because when gratitude becomes a condition, a reason to stay quiet, it stops feeling like appreciation and starts feeling like a burden. How do I speak up when everything I'm given comes with the reminder, we're just trying to help? How do I set a boundary when the moment I do, someone says, it's only because we love you? So I smile, I nod, I say thank you. And inside, I carry a question I never stop asking. Am I still allowed to be me in this house? Every little thing became a test I didn't know I was taking. When I wore my old blouse that makes me feel like myself, someone would frown and say, let's update your wardrobe. When I wanted to watch my favorite shows that comfort me, they'd sigh and say, you've watched that 100 times already. And when I said I wanted to go to church, the answer always came with a long face and a list of reasons why it wasn't practical. So I stopped asking. I stopped choosing. I stopped showing up as myself. I live here but not as me. The food on the table, the schedule, the sounds in the living room, they all belong to someone else. I feel like a guest in my own life, careful not to overstay, careful not to speak too loud, careful not to want too much. And here's the part that hurts the most, the guilt, because I know they mean well. I know no one's trying to hurt me. But the truth is, the result is the same. I don't feel like myself anymore. The woman I used to be, the one with routines and opinions and laughter, she's fading a little more each day. I used to dance in the kitchen while waiting for the kettle to boil. I used to stay up late reading, whispering the words out loud just to feel them. I used to talk about my memories like they mattered. But lately, I just keep quiet. It feels easier, safer. I don't want to be a problem. I don't want to seem ungrateful. But something inside me aches. It aches every time I feel like I'm only welcome when I'm agreeable, when I leave my thoughts at the door, when I become a version of myself that makes everyone else more comfortable. And I ask myself, is it possible to feel loved, but not seen? Is it possible to be taken care of, but not respected? That's the fracture I carry. The emotional crack that so many of us, aging parents, know too well but rarely talk about. We are grateful, but we are also grieving. Grieving not for what's lost in the past, but for the parts of us that are disappearing right now, in real time. Now I want to go even deeper into this subject, because this isn't just about comfort. It's about something far bigger: my identity, my dignity, and my right to exist as fully myself, even now, especially now. This is about realizing that help isn't truly help when it comes at the cost of autonomy, that true care listens before it acts, that real love doesn't ask you to shrink just to fit into someone else's version of what you should be. Because if I have to become someone else to keep the peace, then who's really at peace? If something in this touched you, even just a little, write in the comments, I still want to be me. That one sentence, it might say what so many others are too afraid to speak out loud. And then came the silence. Not the kind that soothes. Not the kind that wraps you in calm. No, this silence felt heavy, like I was walking around my own thoughts on tiptoe. I started swallowing my words, holding them at the back of my throat because every time I said something, I could feel the shift in the air, the sideways glances, the forced smiles, the sighs pretending to be concerned. And little by little, I stopped saying anything at all. Not because I had nothing to say, because I started wondering if maybe they were right, maybe I was being too much, too stubborn, too attached to old things, old ways. Maybe I do complain too much, maybe I am difficult. These thoughts don't come all at once. They creep in, like cold drafts through the cracks, one little doubt at a time. I used to be sure of myself. I didn't question every step I took. But lately, every decision feels like a test I'm destined to fail. Should I ask for my tea the way I like it, or just drink what they give me? Should I say something when they rearrange my drawers, or should I be thankful they care? Should I speak up when I feel overlooked, or will that just sound like ungratefulness again? It's exhausting to constantly weigh your words before you say them. To think twice about something as simple as asking for a blanket, or turning up the volume, or wanting to sit in the sun a little longer. It's a strange kind of fatigue, the kind that comes not from your body, but from your spirit, shrinking itself day after day. And the guilt, the guilt is the heaviest part, because they mean well, they're doing their best. And how dare I complain when they've opened their home to me, when they've taken me in, when so many people are alone out there. I tell myself this over and over. But deep inside, there's a voice that keeps whispering, but what about you? What about your joy, your space, your voice? That voice is getting harder to hear, and that scares me. I used to love talking, telling stories, laughing out loud without apologizing for it. Now, even when I laugh, I glance around to see if it's okay, if I'm too loud, if I'm interrupting something more important. And that's how it happens, how you start disappearing. Not all at once, but piece by piece. First, your coffee, then your songs, then your prayers, then your voice. What people don't realize is that silence isn't always peace. Sometimes, silence is what happens when someone has been corrected too many times, when someone has been told, even gently, that their way is no longer valid, that their habits are strange, that their beliefs are outdated, that their rhythm is too slow, their preferences too complicated. So I go quiet. I smile politely. I nod, and they think I'm content, that I've adjusted, but inside, I feel like I'm holding my breath. And you know what's strange? After a while, even I start believing the silence. I start wondering if maybe I was wrong to hold on to those things that made me feel like me. If maybe letting go is what aging is supposed to feel like. That maybe being invisible is just the natural next step. But deep down, I know better. I know that love doesn't have to mean surrender, that care shouldn't come at the cost of self, that it's possible to be both grateful and hurting, that I can be thankful for the roof over my head and still long for the sound of my own thoughts being heard. There's something very fragile that gets broken when you begin to doubt your right to exist as you are, when every small no feels like you're being selfish, when your needs seem inconvenient. That's when the real loneliness starts, not the kind that comes from being alone, but the kind that comes from not being recognized anymore. I miss the way my home used to smell. I miss choosing what flowers to put on the table. I miss walking into a room and feeling like I belonged there, not like I had to earn my place. And most of all, I miss feeling proud of who I am without needing to defend it. Now, I want to go even deeper into this subject, because this isn't just about personal stories. It's about how easily we confuse silence with harmony, and how often we let guilt take the place of support. Comment: I'm on this journey too, because sometimes, just knowing that someone understands, the weight starts to feel a little lighter. And even with everything I've held back, with all the silences I've swallowed and the thoughts I've hidden just to avoid conflict, I've never stopped wondering if there's a way out. Not an escape, not a rupture, but a real way forward, one that's respectful, possible, and human. A way to still be cared for without being controlled. A way to be seen for who I am, not just for my age, or for what I need help with, but for the life I carry. The things I know, the feelings I still feel, the choices I still want to make. And I've come to believe there is a way, and it begins with respect. What hurts the most is not the care itself, it's the way it's delivered. When care comes from above, when it disregards, decides without asking, imposes itself, and calls it love, that's when it begins to wound instead of heal. But when it comes with true listening, with presence, with honest questions and room for real answers, then it has the power to restore, to honor, to connect. I remember the day my granddaughter, just a girl, looked me in the eyes and asked, "Grandma, do you miss anything?" I almost cried, not because of the question itself, but because, for once, someone truly wanted to hear the answer, with no intent to fix me, no need to argue, just to hear me. And that changes everything. That's what we need. Active listening, not listening to respond, listening to understand. Because sometimes, what a mother needs most is not for her children to act on her behalf, but to act with her, to ask, to include her, to respect her pace, her rhythm, even her silence. Because silence can be peace, but it can also be suffocation. And only those who truly listen know the difference. I know my children worry. I see the fear in their eyes when I drop something, when I forget a date, when I breathe a little slower. But care doesn't have to mean control. You can care with tenderness without erasing someone. You can guide without making someone feel small. You can be present without overtaking. But that takes a shift in mindset. A recognition that loving an aging parent doesn't mean reorganizing their life. It means reorganizing yourself to make space for them, just as they are. And I say this not because I'm ungrateful. I am deeply grateful for all the ways they've shown up for me. But gratitude should never be a leash. It should never become a silent contract where, in exchange for love and support, I have to give up my identity. That's not care. That's erasure. And love should never demand that. Love is not about reshaping someone. It's about honoring who they already are. It's about accepting that even if you would choose differently, they still have the right to choose for themselves. That's dignity. And dignity isn't something we outgrow. It doesn't disappear with age, or weakness, or confusion. It is the deepest part of our humanity, and it deserves to be protected, especially when our voices get softer and our movements slower. Because this so-called peace, this forced harmony, it can wear you down. It's the kind of peace that only exists if you're willing to slowly disappear. And that can't be the definition of love. That's just emotional survival. That's living carefully, making yourself smaller so you won't hear you're being difficult. And I don't want that anymore, not for me, and not for anyone else. If I could speak to the adult children out there who care so much about their aging parents, I would say this: care, yes, but care by listening, care by asking, by inviting them to still feel like the authors of their own story. Because nobody gets old hoping to be managed. We age hoping to still matter, hoping that we still count. If there's a bridge back to connection, I believe it begins here. With a shared cup of coffee made the way each person likes it. With an afternoon where no one tries to fix the other. With a hug that quietly says, "You are still you, and I still see you." That has power, that can heal, that can slowly weave back the bonds that were unraveling. And sometimes, it's not about fixing everything at once. It's about taking the first step, looking into your mother's eyes and asking, is there something you're missing? Not out of duty, but from genuine curiosity. Because when love is real, it dares to hear even the uncomfortable. And when listening is true, it brings back the voice of someone who's been quiet for far too long. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic, because behind this reconnection through respect, there's something even bigger: autonomy. And it doesn't disappear with age, it becomes more sacred. Comment below. This makes sense to me. Because sometimes, just writing down how you feel can begin to open a small space for healing. You know what's strange? With all the things I've lived, all the years I've carried on my back raising children, surviving grief, cooking meals, praying quietly in corners, letting go of myself piece by piece, for the sake of others, what I long for isn't grand. It isn't a big gesture. It's not flowers or praise or even a day to be treated differently. No, what I truly wish for, deep down in the most hidden part of me, is something so simple that it almost feels silly saying it out loud. I just want to hear one sentence, one that says, "You don't have to change. I accept you just the way you are." Because if they said that just once, sincerely, without a sigh or a correction hiding behind the words. I think my heart would rest a little. I think my hands would stop trembling when I picked the wrong dish from the cabinet. I think I'd breathe deeper. Not because everything would suddenly be perfect, but because I'd finally know I still matter. Not the version of me that's quiet and compliant. Not the one who wears what they choose or eats what they serve, but the me who still loves her worn-out sweater, who sings off-key when no one is listening, who misses the old neighborhood and the neighbor who used to stop by with coffee and gossip. That sentence, it would mean they see me, that they're not just helping me, they're still connected to me, not managing, not tolerating, but relating, and more than anything, remembering. Remembering that I didn't stop being a person when I started walking slower, that I didn't stop being wise just because I forget things sometimes, that I didn't stop needing love, real love, the kind that welcomes your truth, even when it's messy, just because I got older. But I've learned something in all this. People don't always understand the impact of their absence until they hear their own silence echoing back at them. Children become adults so fast, and in that race to fix what they think is broken, they sometimes miss what was never broken to begin with. I was never asking them to solve me. I was asking them to sit with me, to listen, to ask questions without having all the answers, to let me have my rituals, to let me exist as more than a project. I think we underestimate how powerful presence is. Not the kind that hovers over your shoulder, watching your every move, but the kind that simply says, "Tell me your story again. How are you, really? Do you miss anything?" That kind of presence doesn't try to rewrite you. It just holds the page while you speak. There are so many of whose mothers, grandmothers, aunts who are living in this silent space, this place between gratitude and sadness. We're thankful, yes, but sometimes we're heartbroken too, because it's not the physical limitations that weigh us down, it's the emotional erasure. It's feeling like your spirit has been edited out of the family photo. I wonder how many daughters, how many sons, would feel shaken if they really understood the weight of the words we don't say. If they knew how many times we've whispered, "I'm fine," when what we meant was, "I'm fading." If they paused long enough to ask, "What do you want today?" instead of deciding for us out of habit. I don't want control. I want consideration. I want to be looked at as someone who still has something to offer, even if my pace is slower, even if my thoughts take longer to form, even if my ways seem old-fashioned. Because behind all of that is a heart that still beats with memories, with longings, with value. What I truly need I believe I'm not alone, and this is a place where I don't feel like I'm just being accommodated, a place where I'm included, and not for what I do or how well I behave, but because I'm still a part of this family's story. My story didn't end when I moved in with them. My story is still being written, and all I ask is to hold the pen every once in a while. That's the sentence I wish they'd say. That I'm still enough, that I don't have to apologize for existing the way I do, that my opinions don't have to match theirs to be respected, that my pace doesn't have to be corrected, that love doesn't mean shrinking, it means expanding to hold space for each other's truths. Now I want to go even deeper into this subject, because what I'm learning is that this conversation isn't just about mothers like me. It's about generations trying to reconnect after years of assumptions. It's about relearning how to sit in the same room and see each other clearly again. Comment here, that's all I ever wanted. Maybe those 5 words will help another woman out there feel seen for the first time in a long while. You know, when I think about everything I've said here, every memory, every quiet moment, every small piece of myself I've had to put away, always comes back to the same desire. I don't want to fight anyone. I'm not trying to prove a point or win an argument. All I've ever truly wanted is to live in peace. But peace, for me, doesn't mean silence. It doesn't mean compliance. It means being able to breathe in a room where I don't feel like I have to shrink. Some days I wonder if the people around me even notice how much I hold back, how many times I bite my tongue, how often I take a deep breath instead of saying what I really think, just to avoid another lecture, another sigh, another reminder that things are different now. I know they care. I believe that, but caring without curiosity is just control in softer clothes. If they really wanted to know me, the real me, they'd ask about what still lights me up inside. They'd ask why I hum that one song while folding clothes. They'd ask what memory I go back to when I close my eyes in the garden. They'd ask what part of me I miss the most. Because here's the truth most people don't realize, until it's too late, when someone starts disappearing, it rarely happens all at once. It's gradual. It starts in the smallest corners, your coffee, your routines, your prayers, and then one day, you wake up and realize, you haven't made a decision for yourself in months. You haven't laughed from your belly in weeks. You haven't felt at home in your own body in longer than you can remember. I'm still here. I'm still capable. I'm still me. But being allowed to be myself shouldn't be a reward I earn by behaving well. It should be the foundation of how I'm treated. I've watched generations grow up with big ideas about freedom, about self-expression, about choosing your own path. I cheered them on. I sacrificed to give them that freedom. And now all I want is to be granted a little of that same grace in return. I don't want to be managed, I want to be met. I want to sit at the table and have my voice heard, not because I raised it, but because it still matters. I want to wear my old sweater without anyone making a face. I want to drink my coffee the way I like it, even if it's a little too strong. I want to walk slower if I need to, pray longer if I want to, and hold on to the traditions that make me feel rooted in who I am. What I need isn't perfection, it's presence. Not obedience, but openness. And not permission to live, but recognition that I never stopped living. You see, respect isn't about agreement, it's about acknowledgement. And real love isn't about making someone easier to handle. It's about holding space for who they are, even when it's inconvenient, even when it's uncomfortable, even when it means letting go of the idea you had about what their life should look like. Because the moment you love someone only when they stop being themselves, you don't really love them. You love the version of them that fits neatly into your life. And that isn't love, it's erasure. So if my story sounds familiar, if something inside you stirred while you listened, maybe you've been there too. Maybe you've felt the ache of disappearing in a house full of people. Maybe you've walked on eggshells to avoid being too much. Maybe you've questioned whether being yourself is worth the price of tension, of pushback, of judgment. Let me tell you something from one heart to another. It is. It's worth it. You are worth it. You don't need to earn your space. You don't need to explain your rituals. You don't need to apologize for the way you've always been. You just need someone who says, I see you. And I'm not here to change you. I'm here to understand. That's the sentence that saves lives. Not just literally, but spiritually, emotionally. The sentence that tells a person they still belong in their own story. Now I want to go even deeper into this subject, because the question that keeps echoing inside me is this: how many people are living half-lives, just to avoid disappointing the people they love? How many are walking through each day in silence, not because they have nothing to say, but because no one is really listening? And if you, like me, have felt that, if your voice has gotten quieter over time, if your world has started to shrink, not because you wanted it to, but because others slowly reshaped it for you, then maybe today is the day to remember who you are, not who they want you to be, not who you've been told to become, but who you really are, underneath it all. If this touched something in you, even in the smallest way, I'd love to know. Comenta aí. Quero viver do meu jeito. That one sentence can speak for so many of us who've forgotten how powerful it is to still take up space. If you stayed with me all the way to here, thank you. Truly, sometimes just being heard, even through a screen, already faz a diferença. And if anything in this story touched you, if you saw even a small part of your own journey reflected in mine, leave a comment below with these words: that message was for me. Because when you say it, you're not just speaking for yourself, you're giving voice to so many others who feel the same, but haven't found the words yet. And if you feel this kind of conversation matters, stories that falam de verdade, que tocam fundo, e que precisam ser contadas com respeito, consider subscribing to the channel. That's how we keep essa troca viva, com empatia, escuta e presença. A like on this video also helps, muito mais do que parece. It shows that this connection we built here mattered to you.